Avisha, welcome to Round Game Strong.
Thanks, Miss.
It's so weird because I feel like this feels really formal and we know each other in an informal setting. So this is weird, but I'm so excited that you're here finally.
Thanks, Miss.
You're amazing. Can I just start by saying that?
I really don't think I am.
I wanted to start with that because I know when we were talking about you coming on here, I could sense, because I can relate, like this feeling of like, oh, but like, what am I going to talk about?
It's the imposter syndrome, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, we all have it, right?
Yeah.
But I do want to say you are. And I think the more I was looking into your work, and we'll get into the detail of it, the more I was just in awe of like how you maintain this motivation to kind of keep working towards the impact you want to make. So we'll get into that a bit more, but I just wanted to start by asking you if you could tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, and and I guess like a little bit about your upbringing as well.
Yeah, of course. And just right back at you. You're amazing. No, you really are. So my name is Avisha. So obviously I started a charity called Friendsline around 10 years ago. A little bit about me. Avisha, early 30s, 32 to be precise. I started my own charity back in just post-university called Friendsline, which is a organisation where we support women and girls in developing countries on their mental health, and we use tech to do so. Started that just after university. Still working on that now. I would say it's probably been my first baby post-university. It's been super close to me. I feel like it's just something that people associate with me. And yeah, now 10 years later, it's funny how things can change, which I'll obviously go into. But yeah, started that post-university, studied geography as my undergraduate, and then risk analysis as my master's. Had a huge interest in how sustainability can support societies and that kind of interlink between economics and geography, social development. And so at the moment I'm working in sustainability for a private equity house, and that's my full-time job. But yeah, obviously Friendsline is my baby. My dog is probably my second baby, kind of first baby now. And yeah.
Well, your dog is here. He's
yes,
listening.
he is.
Special guest.
Pico is here. Yes.
I want to ask you, during these 10 years, what is the biggest thing that you've learned about yourself running this charity?
One of the things I've learned is how important, through Friendsline, is how important being on the ground is. Like actually immersing yourself with the people that you're working with. So that's probably one of the only ways that you can, I don't think everyone lives such different lives. I don't think you'll ever really truly understand like how anyone lives or feels, but bringing yourself close to the communities in which you're hoping to have an impact is extremely key. And I think it's also important because you never want to have this kind of sense of that that there's a one-up on kind of any kind of relationship, just because you're coming from a different type of situation where you're not going through something doesn't mean that puts you on a pedestal of any sort, just because I live in London and, some of the women that we work with are obviously from very small villages in India doesn't make us different. There's so much that is so similar in some sense. And I think that was initially why I started Friendsline, because I wanted to stay connected to the women that I met on my travels, and and women who you could develop such a lovely friendship with, even though you have such different lives, and you'd find something to laugh about with each other, or you could talk about, you'd find like commonalities within each other that you could kind of relate to. But then obviously your lives were very, very different. But I think it was Friendsline having that connection to women in different countries, no matter where you live, and finding a way to kind of support and empower each other. That was the kind of the foundation of why Friendsline began, because I wanted to stay connected to them. I didn't want to come back to London and get kind of busy and lost in my bubble again, and I wanted to find a way to kind of support in any way I possibly could the women in India and Nepal that I had met in the ground. So yeah, I think one of the biggest takeaways is staying true to the fact that there is so much similarities in anyone that you come across in life, no matter what walk of life they come from, and no one's that different, really, I think. Yeah.
It's really fascinating to me that when I was looking up what you do as part of Friendsline, one of the big sort of mission statements you were putting out was like, the ability to help women like across the world through, the touch of a button or like clicking and using Skype at the time 10 years ago.
Yeah, it's crazy.
At what point then did you decide that no, like we have to be on the ground? Like what was that specific, point where you had to make that decision of pivoting a bit?
Yeah, so I think the pivot actually was because it started off kind of connecting volunteers in the UK to women that were a part of like our partners organisation. So they'd be coming for some other kind of support to local organisations, and we partner with local organisations, and they then become part of the Friendsline programme as well. But I think we quickly learned after probably around I say quickly, but I would say around 2 or 3 years later, that it was really hard to scale that kind of model of one-to-one Skypes. And also it became more complicated because obviously some of the women did have certain types of issues which they wanted to talk about, which the volunteers in the UK weren't trained or equipped to do so, and that's when we kind of thought about focusing on mental health a lot more, and figuring out a way how we can scale that, which is why we thought yoga and mindfulness and creating mental health seminars for women where they could all come together in groups, which is the model now. So they could all, we partner with local organisations. Women come on a week-to-week basis, on a weekly basis, to participate in yoga and mindfulness seminars, which we pre-recorded. We create a safe space for them. They build their friendships, and they just get an hour of like just pure self-care, which is obviously a huge luxury in these communities. They don't get time where, they don't have that time at all in the same way we do. And it is such a luxury to say to, each other, oh, on a Friday night, I'm going to go to a yoga class, or I'm going to do my, 20 minutes of morning routine every morning. Like, those are actually such privileges that we have. So it's kind of giving those to women who don't have that time and space. And the positive impact that it can have on your mental health. It might not be hugely transformative in when you just say it, but actually it can be very impactful, just that 1 hour to yourself.
So when we talk about helping women, and we were talking about like the differences and the similarities that we have with the people that you work with, what is that demographic that you generally focus on when you're talking about like the women in India and Nepal?
We do partner with organisations who are supporting any form of kind of gender-based violence, or just women that are kind of single mums perhaps, who are getting extra support from that organisation in some shape or form, or they've kind of been through, it doesn't have to be gender-based violence, but it could be some kind of economic turmoil that they're going through where they can't support. The demographic, I would say, is any age range from, we work with girls in school as well, so it could be 14 to 18, and then the women are any age really up until 65, 70. So complete age range, but somewhat similar circumstances, I would say. Somewhat.
You were in university, right, when you started this?
I just
Just
graduated.
finished.
Yeah.
Why was this cause very important to you particularly?
I think going back to what I said earlier about just like it was, I wanting to, well, cause, so from the perspective of mental health or just impact generally, I think impact generally, I have always been someone that I feel needs to act on things. Like I think to my detriment sometimes I just need to like be doing something. And if something causes me sadness or you know, I see something that I want to change, I will go out and find a way to do that. And I think for me it was this just drive that I had to still help in some way that I could when I got back to London. And again, like I said, it's just as much for me as it is for others, right? It was really just important to me to be doing something that was more than just what I was doing at the time of my job, I guess, you know?
Yeah.
It's actually, so it feels like so long ago now, but yeah, I think it was just a drive that I had to just keep doing something to help in any way I could, really. Yeah.
Can you tell me maybe some examples of initiatives that you ran when you were out there, you know, over the last 10 years that have really stuck with you? Or maybe anybody you met whilst doing that work?
Yeah, definitely. There's definitely a few women that instantly come to mind. And I think it was one trip in Dharamshala that I went, and obviously, the general model of Friendsline is that the women come to this like center space that we've got, and you know, we fund the yoga mats, we fund the projector, we fund, you know, small things like tea and incense just to make the room and the space feel really nice. But one thing that I did do in that trip is I went out to some of the women's houses, and I just remember the insane level of warmth and kind of welcoming I got from two didis, Samindali Didi and Sola Didi, and it was as if I was like their daughter or something. Like it was, you know, it was a really small kind of hut, and that was their home. But I came in and they'd made chai, they'd made like pakora, they'd made like, you know, and like a massive plate of like pakora, and it just felt so warm, and there was just so much love there. And it's such a cliche, right? Like it's such a cliche, but it truly is one of those things that just kind of stick in your mind. And that's what I mean. It's like when you are talking to some of these women, it's like you've known each other for ages. And the way you're talking to each other is as if you've known each other for ages. And that's when it becomes, I think that's the difference between like doing something because you have to do it and doing something out of like true belief in something, you know? Like I really, like there wasn't any other motive or agenda, or it's not like when you're at work when you have to just like, you know, you're meeting like clients or people or colleagues or whatever. Like there's nothing more than just two people coming together and just like giving that kind of warm welcome kind of love to each other with no other like motive at all. So I think experiences like that I'll always like think of and just remember. And it's like cracking jokes, you know, like jokes which are just, they're just so simple and just so sweet.
What stood out to me when I was looking up some of the work that you've done was that all of these women, I think it was in your captions in some of the posts that you've shared, it was, you know, despite having gone through such difficulties and, you know, like instances of their husbands having either like left them, or having economic issues, or like domestic violence, whatever it is, like they were always smiling. And I think you've said a couple of times this idea of like it's just very chill, and it's you're cracking jokes and you're laughing. It's a real contrast, because when you think about running a charity, you always think, oh, like this is a really heavy like thing, we're helping women who've gone through like really difficult things, and it must be like we must all sit in a circle and just be sad. But it isn't like that, is it?
No, it's really not. And I think that's what I meant when I said it's just as much helping me, because it is such a eye-opener to the things that really do matter in life. Again, cliche, but it's like you said, it's your perspective and your circumstance. These women don't let their circumstances define them. There's still something that they feel that they can smile about, or there's some kind of joy about. And it's as much as there is kind of pain there's this ability to just not even think positive, but just be so present that there is no other option but to kind of smile and just enjoy the moment, like they're not thinking about what's happened to them or what's going to happen to them. And yet, generalizing, I'm sure there's situations where there is a lot of like heaviness to it, but one of the takeaways for me is just that level of presence, I think, that you can have. And I think I try to take that more into kind of my day-to-day life as much as I can as well.
I imagine that running this charity would not have been a solo venture. You would have had a team around you. How did you decide who would join the team? And actually beyond that also, how do you then work together to create the kind of courses and the modules and the seminars that you run? How do you decide like what will have the most positive impact to these women's lives?
So I think so it definitely it obviously started a solo venture, but I'm super, super lucky that two of my very, very close friends, one of my best friends and another close friend, both joined the journey very early. So I definitely wasn't alone. It takes what's the saying? It takes a village. Yeah. So I had two really close girlfriends that joined on as trustees. Had another friend, a colleague turned friend from one of my last companies that also joined as a trustee. So we did a lot of research on kind of different. We were really lucky actually to have a lady, Meninda, who joined us as our kind of impact lead. And she born and raised in India herself. I met her actually. I met her in Boston when I was doing a course out there, and she approached me wanting to get involved in Friendsline, and she worked for the WHO and a lot of like grassroots work in India, and she helped us figure out how we our seminars were just yoga and mindfulness, right? And we kind of built a program, like a 12-week cycle program that kind of works through that. But she helped us figure out how we can assess the impact that the seminars were having on the women. So we used, and the problem is with mental health, it's so hard to measure, right? So it's not like quantifiable in some sense in the same way as like, feeding X amount of people or putting X amount of people in school. Like, it's really hard to measure, whether you're having a positive impact or not. But there are tools out there, obviously developed by some of the kind of the UNs of the world, the WHOs, kind of that enable you to kind of do a questionnaire for participants and then do that on like a 6-week basis and kind of measure and monitor if we are having an impact, essentially. So it's really good to have a team who could provide insight from that perspective, so we could be as measurable as possible. But a lot of trials, tests, research, focus groups, feedback from participants, what's useful, what's not, what's helping, what's not, what would you like to see more of, etc., etc. And I don't think that ever I don't think you ever get to a point where everything's the way it should be. There'll always be something you need to improve and change and go back to the drawing board about.
Yeah. And why was it very important for you to incorporate mental health and kind of practices around that in order to contribute?
Yeah, so I think I'm definitely someone that suffers from anxiety, and I'm definitely an overthinker. So I think a combination of things, like, one, my personal appreciation for mental health, and how, I think in the UK there's been a huge focus over the last few years, probably the last decade, I would say, on mental health, and and generally, like, there's a lot of support that is offered here when it comes to mental health. Not to say that, there's still changes that would be great to happen. But I think the difference, obviously, in some developing countries, especially in like India, in certain communities, is how much mental health is stigmatized, and how much, people don't have that support in the same way we do. They don't have resources or the concept of, self-care or having like well-being days and all of the rest of it. Like, I just really, really appreciate and know how much of a difference that can have to someone's mental state. And add on the other layers of kind of, if you're, if you have undergone some kind of gender-based violence and the impact that can have as well. We all have, areas, I think, that we all have problems, we all have worries, etc. But that added layers obviously adds more to it. So I can't remember the question now if I'm answering it.
It was around why mental health was so important within this work for you.
Yeah, mental health and mental wellness has always been extremely important to me. Just me, myself, like, I'm someone that I love psychology. I love understanding why I feel a certain way, why I act a certain way, all the complexities and the kind of like the way the mind works. I've always been like super fascinated by it. And I feel like I'm that, I love a morning routine, as I'm sure we all do. And, part of that's always about kind of, how I'm feeling, or, ensuring that I am living day to day by principles that are important to me, and always coming back to kind of how I measure success, like, to myself.
It's actually very interesting because I'm also a huge advocate for it, and maybe it's one of the reasons why I have this platform. I'm also a fellow overthinker. I'm also somebody who has anxiety, and I find that when we walk around with these sort of like, things happening in our brain, I do feel like sometimes it's that extra burden that we're walking around with at times, where like I spend so much time, over analyzing and hyperfixating on like things I could have done differently, said differently. Truth is, I can't change that, but I know that I have these tendencies at times that I am working on. But it makes it so almost like critical for me to then use whatever resources I have to kind of at least talk about it, at least make it like, and I think I kind of go a bit too far where I kind of make jokes about it.
No, for sure. For sure, 100%.
But I relate to that. I think that's where that purpose comes from, possibly.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. I think also, like, I think this is what comes back to, I know before we were speaking about kind of love-hate relationship with social media, because I think, yes, people are more aware of, the Insta Reel highlights and stuff. Everyone's aware that, Instagram's not what you see is not actually always what's going on behind closed doors, and people are trying to be more candid and more real online, which is great to see. It's great to see like more people opening up about kind of the struggles that don't meet the eye. But I also think that there's more filter on that as well. even that is being kind of
curated.
Yeah, exactly, being curated. So that's why sometimes I find social media quite frustrating as well, because it's like even the rawness and realness of just struggles and worries are also being curated more. Yeah, so it's complicated. It's really complicated. But when I think about Friendsline, I think that everyone deserves a safe space to kind of look after their mental well-being, and that's what we try to create with Friendsline in India. Yeah.
Firstly, I would like to say that I think through the work that you do, you're kind of removing that element of like trivialization, let's say, because you're actually in the rooms, you know, you're delivering well-researched topics and you're with professionals. So I think that there's that. I think there's all the stuff behind the scenes that you're doing that is the most important. That's the crux of the work, right?
Yeah.
The question I had naturally off the back of that was, how do we actually measure it? Because I know you said that it's hard to measure mental health, but is there a way that you measure the impact that you're making overall? Like, do you check in on the women over time?
Yeah,
what they're doing?
Yeah, for sure. So part of the monitoring evaluation is getting just pure feedback from the women that join the sessions. So but the thing is, it is tricky. Again, the demographic and cultural barriers that prevent them giving authentic feedback sometimes. Them just, you know, that's been a challenge for us, you know, instead of just getting a kind of, it's great, like we really enjoy it, like getting more than that, and them not feeling like they need to be polite to us just because, you know, with the organisation, whatever it might be. So it is definitely challenging getting authentic feedback as well, especially without some of them feeling empowered that they can say something that's, you know, not criticism but constructive, or them being too polite. But that's part of it.
That also can be such a cultural thing, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Honestly, I'm like so full of niceties at work. I'm like, oh, no, you're great!
Exclamation mark, no worries! Exclamation mark, yeah, totally full of worries.
So many worries. No, as a manager at work, I feel it all the time. I'm like, I need to like shake this out of me. This need to be so pleasing all the time.
No, I know. And it's crazy because like, I know I'm too nice at work sometimes. Or I know I'm just like, well, I think I'm just generally a very nice person.
Yeah.
But,
I would agree.
But I am extremely opinionated and extremely stubborn and extreme. Like, I know I feel like just women, we struggle with, not as a generalization again, but sometimes I struggle with just being the kind of really confident, strong, like, and my husband would he's like, I'm sure he'd completely disagree about me being overly nice all the time. So he has to, you know, hear all the complaints and the annoyances and all the rest of it. But yeah, I feel like we try too hard to be too nice. But then there's the other extreme where, like, I feel like, I don't know, maybe I'd rather be full of niceness and empathy as opposed to being, I don't know, a completely opposite to that.
Or like cutthroat, because
or cold, like going back to what you said, right? Over worrier, oversharer. Like sometimes I think, oh, why am I such an over worrier? Why am I such an oversharer? But actually it is a strength to be that as well. Like, you know, I love that. Yes, I tell every stranger my whole life, or like my whole all the problems I'm going through that day. But like, I quite like that because I always get something back from the person as well, and then suddenly you've made like a lovely human connection that you might not be able to make if it's just somewhat surface level as well. So I don't know, I think that's a reflection for me that I need to probably embrace my oversharingness more, or my overworryingness.
But I actually think there's not enough of that in the world.
Yeah.
I'm similar. I sometimes come home from like, you know, group situations and I'm just like, why did I tell them that detail about me? It's so unnecessary.
I know, yeah, completely, 100%. I do that all the time.
Oh, well, talking about the present of just what you're working on, we talked a little bit offline about how you were feeling about running this charity, and I wanted you to touch on a little bit how your feelings and perceptions have evolved towards this work and where you are today with it.
Yeah, sure. So I think, I think I was telling you, obviously, like we're at a bit of a, I would say, a bit of a crossroads with Friendsline, and definitely going through some kind of, well, yet to have some kind of reflective conversations about it, but with the other trustees. But from my personal perspective, I feel like it's been 10 years, and we started off wanting to bring this mental health access through videos to women in remote regions of India and developing countries. But in the last 10 years, like, so much has evolved when it comes to online content, and it's really hard now to keep up with the content out there. So, when we first started, like, there was barely any yoga and mindfulness, like, online, like YouTube videos. Like, it was something that we were like, oh, this is like super cool, like being able to kind of share these like pre-recorded videos to groups, and there wasn't much of that online. And now everything's so professional, everything's so advanced. There's obviously been a massive creator economy that's just evolved. And also, so part of it's like, I don't know how fresh our model is as much as it was 10 years ago. And 10 years ago, I, believed in it so much because it was so fresh. And now it's harder for me, I think, to really back it as much as I used to. And it's really hard for me to say that because it's literally been my baby my whole life. My whole adult kind of ish life. And it's really, like, I think especially your first venture or your first anything you create, you'll do so much to kind of to see it, like, not succeed, but just to keep it moving, right, and keep it kind of happening. But there's part of me now, it's like, do we need to think about putting a line under it and just being like, we created as much impact that we could in the last like 10 years, and now putting energy elsewhere, so I think I wouldn't say it's the type of, and you notice your energy, like where your energy is.
Yeah.
And if your energy is not in something that it was massively before, like, you have to question yourself as to why that is.
Yeah.
And so I'm kind of going through that process. I'm just like wondering, like, why is it that I'm not putting as much time as I used to? Or why is it that sometimes it feels like, it's going to sound really bad, but that it feels like a chore, like it's something I have to keep on top of, rather than the desire that always used to just come so naturally, to spend my weekends or evenings or whatever, like, to make sure it happens. Now it's like that kind of feeling at the bottom of my stomach that I'm like, oh, I really need to, like, I need to do this, I need to do that, or I need to have a conversation with the team. And it doesn't come as naturally as it used to.
Yeah.
So going through a bit of a reflective process on that and trying to understand what that might mean for the future, really.
I think there is something in giving ourselves grace, in knowing that we are evolving as people. Yeah. Like, you've had so much change happen to you. It's like that time in your life, right, throughout your 20s, where you go through like the most changes, and entering your 30s.
Yeah.
So I think mentally it would be weird if you still felt the exact same way 10 years ago,
for sure,
compared to now.
Yeah.
And I completely feel you in that, like, when it's your first baby and you just want to keep it going. And then there's an element of guilt that comes in where it's like, I'm not giving this the energy it deserves. Am I doing it justice? Should I just not pursue it further just because I want to like almost preserve it?
Yeah. 100%. And yeah, and before it felt like, and I guess it's like this somewhat feeling like you're failing, or like you've failed at something when you decide to turn a kind of close a book on a certain chapter of that. Like, you feel, and I wouldn't say that's how I overly feel like that, but there's part of me that's also just like that was that was me. That was such a huge part of me. So it feels, this. I'm definitely someone that struggles sometimes with change, but it's that feeling like that. It's like, oh, that's like closing. Like, what does that mean? Like, or potentially, like, that was. You associate it with your identity, and as your identity changes, it obviously brings a bit of nerves, and it can be quite nerve-wracking. So I think it's a combination of that as well.
Yeah, especially if you've been known like for such a long part of your life.
Exactly.
I get that so much. Like the whole, I relate so much with not being able to deal with change, or like a change in identity or perception of how other people see me.
Yeah.
Even when it's a good thing.
Yeah.
I'm literally like, what's happening?
Yeah.
Like, no, stop.
Yeah. 100%. And I think when we talk about identity, like sometimes I do this like exercise where in a plain book or journal or whatever, I do like a little bubble, and I was like, what is at the end of my life, what will have been a successful like what would I classify as a successful life, or what does that mean to me if I was on my deathbed? And one of the big areas is always like impact, essentially, and ensuring that I've kind of helped where I can and supported where I can, and like created some kind of change. And I've been able to, I've been, at least in some small capacity, been able to do that through Friendsline. So it's also leaving that, knowing that it's a core kind of principle, or, definition for me as to like what is important in life, and what does that now translate to if I'm closing my chapter on Friendsline.
Yeah, it doesn't like mean that value doesn't hold for you, right?
No, exactly. That's what I mean. Like it's it's a really it's really important to me, and I know that's a huge part of me. So how do I kind of continue that in a different capacity?
Love that.
Yeah.
What do you have coming up next then? Is there something that you have in mind, or is there something you would like to focus on more over the next decade?
Yeah. I think it's always, that question is always like changing and evolving, and you always have to like take a step back and think about it, right? But there's a couple of things which I am really excited about, and I think doing another one of the little things on my small bubble of like what success is ensuring that I am meeting people from different walks of life and kind of diversity of like backgrounds and people in whatever kind of shape or form that takes. And I think that sometimes translates to like at the weekends doing different things that are outside of my usual bubble. So me and my husband recently, last week, we started volunteering with another charity called Refuge International Network. They do amazing work. It's run by a family, and they do food banks and outreach for homeless people that are homeless in Charing Cross every Saturday, 1 till 3. Amazing community that they've kind of created of volunteers and of people. So just engaging in like activities like kind of like that are somewhat grounding selfishly, So yeah, I'd love to kind of spend more time over the next however long supporting other organisations where I can, meeting as many people from different walks of life as I can. I think you and I probably are quite similar like that. Like it's really important to be challenged and to talk and to kind of always have your like mind opened by different things in different conversations. So looking forward to that. I've also started a little venture called the Crazy Paw Rent Company for which is yoga and fitness gear for dog lovers.
I love that.
So I am going to be creating an online store for anyone that is fellow dog obsessed psycho mums like me.
I'll be one of your first.
So yeah, looking forward to again kind of just putting some energy into that little venture, and yeah, I guess constant reflection, right? Just figuring it out and ensuring I stay true to what is important in how I spend my time and energy.
Absolutely. And you're doing it. I think you're so inspiring. I'm sure like hearing your story would be very, very eye-opening for a lot of people, because I think often for me, I was thinking about it this morning on my way here, where I was just like, I really like do fixate a lot on like my bubble and of problems that I have and like my community and the sort of things we talk about. And it doesn't mean that they're less important or not problems to address, but there's other stuff out there to also look at, and there's also such an opportunity to take the privilege we've been given to and translate that into, you know, contribution. I'm always thinking about that. I feel like I never do enough. I don't do enough charity work, you know, and so it's not that the intention isn't there. It's just that, like, where do I start? You know, how do I fit it in my busy schedule? How do I start to prioritize that? Sure, so I'm hoping that this, you know, will help motivate me and maybe others as well to like start thinking about where we can kind of make more of an impact as well. There is one last question for you that I ask everybody. Avisha, what do you have strong game in?
Oh, damn it. I was literally thinking about this question. I have no idea what I have strong game in.
Very legitimate answer, by the way.
I have no idea what I have strong game in. Oh, I read this. This doesn't answer the question, but I feel like it kind of relates to being asked this question. That I read this really interesting. I think it may be. I can't remember who it was by. You know how it's this concept that anyone that struggles from imposter syndrome, when they're asked something which, you know, they have these like what's it called? Like is it a pseudonym?
Like an alias.
Alias, that's it. That's the word, Mitz. Yeah. So yeah, this whole concept about people that have imposter syndrome is to find an alias name.
Mm-hmm.
So I think Beyonce has like Athena something, or I'm not sure. So you think about another name of your person. So say for me, I don't know, it could be Polypawsome or something.
Mm-hmm.
And that person is like, you envision yourself as them, and this person is someone that can completely like, you know, compliment themselves, can say like 100 million nice things, walks into the room, is like the most confident person in the room, has like no imposter syndrome whatsoever.
Yeah.
And you embody and envision like this person, and it starts to kind of empower you to some degree, because you're not shying away or hiding behind yourself. You're like literally like living this alias. I don't know where I'm going with this. What is my strong game? What is my strong game? What's your strong game, Mitz?
What's my strong game? Gosh, I don't know. I think my strong game is probably in holding space for people to tell their stories.
Nice.
Yeah.
So true.
I have other strong games like dancing, like Sasha Fierce.
Oh my gosh, amazing. Sasha Fierce, that's it.
Sasha Fierce is the one. Yeah. I use dance as my sort of like way to embody something that I'm not, basically. Yeah. And it's very weird because that's what social media sees. And so anybody who follows my personal page like only sees the Sasha Fierce a lot of the time, but she's a bit cringe as well because she's learning.
Yeah.
So, you know, so it's a bit like, that's not who I am, because if you meet me, I'm actually like a bit different. I don't know, it's hard to explain, but so that's probably mine. Has that inspired you to think about yours?
I think my strong game is just finding micro joys in life, actually. I think I like my friends will tell you, like I get a lot of joy from just random encounters and just like the smallest things. I think like literally podcasts in the park with Pico walking, or you know, being on the sofa with my husband and Pico, and I don't know, like all the little things in life. Like I think I'm quite good at embracing that and appreciating the little things. I think. I don't know if that's a strong game, but I kind
massively.
I will find stories out of like nothing, which makes me happy. So
it makes you who you are, and I think that's so nice. I feel like there's like a lot more emphasis on focusing on little things now as well, isn't there? And just small joys.
Yeah, definitely small joys, and just like being able to relate and talk to anyone, I think I would say is one of my strengths for sure. Yeah,
I love that. Well, that brings us towards the end of this episode, but thank you so much, Avisha, for being here and being so honest and open. And
you made it super comfortable bits. I'm not going to lie. I'm going to forget that this is probably going on.
No, that's something I have strong game in.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, definitely. You're amazing, honestly.
Oh, was he okay? Oh, well. All right. Well, we'll wrap up. But no, thank you so much. I look forward to the new dog company that you're going to be starting, and just all of the incredible work that you will continue to do. So good luck with it. And hopefully we might have another episode in the future where you talk about all the
crazy
future things you do.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you. All right.
Thank you so much, Bits.
Hi, me again. Just wanted to say thank you so much for listening to this episode of Brown Game Strong. I hope you enjoyed it and got something useful out of it. If you'd like to stick around, then please hit subscribe if you're listening on YouTube. And if you're on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, you can click follow to get updated on all of the latest episodes. It helps me immensely in continuing to bring you more exciting guests and interesting stories so that we can continue to learn about all the awesome work that's happening in our community. Thank you for your support. It never goes unnoticed, and I look forward to seeing you in the next episode.